Well, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, very excited to have Dennis Lever here today. Author. We'll start with that.
All right.
And we'll say author of the new book, if you're watching, The Ragged Road. Great read.
You finished it?
Read it on the plane.
Nice.
Down and back. Yes. And I'm not a reader. I'm a listener.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to really switch my mind to read the pages. And there's great value in reading pages, I believe. Yeah.
People tell me it's a quick read.
It was a quick read.
Other people say, I can't put it down.
Yeah.
I like this. I couldn't wait to get back to it.
Yes.
So being on a plane, traveling is perfect.
Yes, it was perfect. So the book takes a reader through a journey of adversity, betrayal, ultimately the powerful themes of faith, love, and vulnerability. Those are good words. One reader shared, Ragged Road is a very compelling read. It takes a lot of guts to put what I've read on paper. Reading this story gave me feelings in my chest I remember dealing with during my divorce. The writing is inspiring and delivers a personal vision. Lever should be proud of this book. It's a great read. Nate Winchenbach, Maine Lobsterman.
Yeah.
That's a great endorsement.
Yeah, he was just blown away
by
it, and it just struck him, and he could relate. So
he could relate.
Was awesome.
Yeah, the book is very relatable for sure. So a little bit of your background, a passionate writer dedicated to exploring the intersection of God's endless love with human experience. Working primarily as an educator in the field of radiation oncology, you've helped cancer patients battle through their disease. You've authored 5 editions of Washington and Lever's Principles and Practice of Radiation Therapy, which was recently translated into a simplified Chinese edition. You continue to write, helping patients and loved ones with the physical and emotional effects of cancer. Did all that, and then writing of this genre.
Yeah.
Quite a transformation.
I recently wrote an article, I shouldn't say recently, several years ago, about prostate cancer for my radiation oncology journal. And I just met with a guy yesterday and shared the article with him. He just got diagnosed with prostate cancer. So we had a little chat over coffee about his options with surgery and radiation. And he found it really helpful. So I do that kind of thing. It's really just prostate. I'm a prostate cancer survivor myself, so I had some experience with that about probably 5 years ago.
Interesting. Yeah, the whole world of oncology, I mean, to think, and you were cutting edge in the oncology world, right? Things were changing. And this is described in the book, so maybe you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting you pull that up because, when I got involved in the late 70s, radiation oncology was sort of even back then, people just didn't mention the C word. It was, a tumor, a mass, but not cancer. Where today, I think we're a little more open about talking about it. The cure rates back then, when you took all comers, prostate, breast, colorectal, the pediatric malignancies, about 1/3 of all the people that were treated would survive their disease. So most people didn't survive their disease. They may have survived for several years before a recurrence. And today, I think that number is about doubled. It's almost 68, 70% of people who have cancer today will survive their disease. So you're right. We made a lot of advancements, and it's been good, mostly due to technology. Computers have just assisted in the imaging and the delivery of the radiation and made things a lot easier for the patient.
Yeah, that part of the book. The great thing about the book is it has lots of different facets to it, and throughout your life, and to follow that oncology piece, and then to go into education in that field, pretty interesting. Yeah. So let's talk about the book. What motivated you to write this particular book? You'd written books on technical books. This is a big step from that.
Yeah.
So where did that come from?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think in some way I just felt this kind of inspiration. I journaled a lot in my earlier years after becoming a Christian. And I think reading some of those, I was recognizing, wow, I forgot that this happened. And I forgot that happened. And thought maybe we could put something together. I've written before, as you mentioned. I've got 10 other textbooks, all radiation oncology. It's really the same edition that just keeps getting revised. And so we're up to 6 now. And I bowed out on the 5th edition, kind of helped this other woman take my place. And we worked together for a little bit. And she's just doing a really good job. That edition's coming out in May. So this was a new genre, brand new, totally different. And I was like, I'll tell you, the other stuff that we would write was a lot of technical stuff and helping people understand how to do things and using research to support that. Where this was more like, instead of telling people, it was about showing people this is what can happen in your life, and this may be an option for you to deal with forgiveness or lack of forgiveness or some pain or any number of problems. And I think putting the book together was a good experience. It was really healing, and it was adventurous, and I could see God's hand woven through the process. Because when you're writing something like this, you don't know whether you're wandering in the right direction or not. And there's doubt that comes in. Am I doing the right thing? Is this really going to happen? And I realized, which I didn't know before, everything we wrote for the other book would come back after being edited. And I was like, wow, I wrote that? That's really nice. Yeah. They would edit it and make it sound really good. Where this was just all me. And, I did have an editor, and that editor would help me by saying, you really need to expand this or, cut that out or develop his character a little bit more. And it wasn't until I got a publisher, Whiffenstock, they're out of Eugene, Oregon. They're a Christian publishing outfit. And I gathered, they're not a big outfit. They're not about gathering authors that are going to be on the bestseller list, but that have merit and something to say. So I thought, okay, they wanted to hear what I had to say. And I think writing in the radiation therapy realm, all those textbooks help because they are an academic publishing house primarily. They have 4 labels or different groups. And mine was sort of the bottom rung, this resource publishing for people they're going to take a chance on. So that was helpful and encouraging. And, okay, now we're not wandering as much. We got some deadlines to meet, and surprised the heck out of me. It was supposed to be published in like April or March of this year. Yeah. And when I submitted everything in the final drafts in December, it was 1 month later.
Wow.
I wasn't ready. I was like, wow, I don't know what to do here.
So what do you do? Your book is published, whether it's on time, ahead of time, or behind. What then happens?
I think, writing everything and then submitting it, they do a read through. They don't edit it. You're responsible for doing your own editing. And at that point, you just work with a typesetter, and they typeset the book as though it's going to appear, left side of the page, right side of the page, little heading up top. And yeah, that began to look real when I saw that. And then you just wait. And, the waiting part was good, but it came out really quick. It came out on Amazon first, and the publisher was really good about, because they know this stuff, they offered the Kindle version for $2.99 just to get people out there, purchasing it, talking about it, and that kind of thing. And that's been really helpful, having that. And also, the soft cover is also available. It's also available on hardcover. Somebody was telling me too, there's a Kindle version now that you can take in your car, and AI speaks to you.
Oh, no kidding.
By reading the book to you. Yeah.
What a surprise.
I know. I'm shocked.
What was kind of the deep rooted thing that you said I have a message I need to give? Kind of what were those? What fed those to you?
Yeah. I'm reminded of a scripture that talks about the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So for me, I was living in darkness when I lived in California, when I was living in debauchery and doing drugs, smoking a lot of pot, drinking. And yet that light just shone down and continued to shine down on me, even in my darkness, until I recognized that, wow, something's happening here, you know? So I wanted to write about that. I wanted to write about that transition and hopefully encourage others that if you're living in this darkness or you're experiencing some unforgiveness or some problems, that light can shine into the darkness and the darkness cannot overcome it. That's the truth.
Mm. Mm. Well, it's definitely that encouragement in the book,
Yeah.
for sure. When you were going through that, those years of, or however long it was, debauchery or whatever word you want to use to describe that, did you recognize the light, that it was there and you were avoiding it? Or what was your relationship to that light at that time in your life?
Good question. I think, being raised in the Catholic Church as of 8th grade, my twin brother and I, Mom said, if you guys want to keep going to catechism, you can, but if you don't, you're done. I was done. 8th grade, thank you very much. So probably from 8th grade until this conversion process happened, I was 27. So what's that? I don't know, dozen years or so of living about me.
Mm-hmm.
I have 3 boys, and when they would act up or become a little selfish or self-centered or get a little antsy, my wife, Jeannie, and I, we would look at each other and we had this little song we would sing. It's all about me. It's all about me. And the kids would look at us like, oh, is that what I'm doing? Yeah. And that's what I was doing in those years. It was all about me. I mean, I still was working with a cancer patient. I was still helping on that realm, and I felt good about that. But once I was done with the hospital, it's all about me. And that went on for years. And I got hooked up with some, not so nice people who it was all about them. They didn't care much about me. And I think, I was seeing a little bit of the light. There was a priest, Father John. He reminded me of the Friar Tuck.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of roly-poly type guy, a little balding up top here. And he was the pastor at the oncology wing in the hospital I worked at. It was Eden Hospital in Castro Valley, California. Small hospital, probably about the size of Midcoast here in Maine. And he was just a nice guy. He wasn't a priest. He would chat with me. We would move patients from their bed to a stretcher and then having them transported down to our department for their treatment. And then we would help. The nurses would help us too get that back. But always was bumping into him. And so I decided I'm going back to church. So I would go out partying on Saturday night as late as I decided to, and then go to the latest mass that they offered, which was probably about noontime. And sometimes I would see Father John there and he'd chat with me. But I think he was a really good representation that God was pursuing me. And I didn't know it. It was just kind of like this relationship happening. And we were kind of getting to know each other on a kind of a religious or spiritual level. Yeah.
So you mentioned you have a twin.
Yeah.
You, a big family, right?
Yep.
How many?
5 boys.
5 boys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
So
where are you in the lineage?
My oldest brother was the editor for this book.
Oh, no kidding.
So he's edited 4 or 5 other books. He lives down in Providence where I grew up.
Okay.
And so he was really helpful in that. And that every month he would give me another chapter. We'd get back and forth. And it's really good for him. He's in a nursing home now. So this gave him, I think, some purpose and some direction.
Did he help you remember some things that you might not have remembered? Or from your older brother's perspective, should we say?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
My brother, I have another brother who lives across the street from me, and he was really helpful and instrumental. He helped me remember things, kind of jog my memory, and he was pretty instrumental in my conversion experience too.
Yeah.
So,
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, let me share with you. I brought this little note. I'm surprised I found this. This is a little card that he sent me. And in the top there it reads March 6, 1983.
So, March 6, 1983.
That
almost
was
to the
a day that God knocked on my heart. And I really was like, wow, something happened. Can I read part of it?
Please do.
Yeah. Dear Dennis, as I was praying tonight before bed, God brought you to my mind. I began to pray for you and for the protection and love of Jesus to be in your life. I sensed a struggle and a battle going on in the heavens over you, and I'm sure that you are a very special person in God's plan. He showed me that I could pray for you and trust in His promise, even if I didn't know where you were or how to get in touch with you. I feel close to you tonight, even in the absence. I know in the miracle of creation that God made my spirit so that it would be sensitive to you. I can't explain that, but know that your specialness has been revealed to me. May God richly bless you in the days ahead. May He guide you in your decisions and anoint your mind. Be prepared for the struggle and a fierce battle if you decide to continue to seek the way of Jesus. He will walk with you and even carry you if necessary. If you but trust Him, He's reliable. I'll write again soon, just a note of love and encouragement for you, Don and family. So when I received that, I was actually doing my laundry. I remember the day. Hated doing laundry. You got the wash in, that's good, that goes quick, and then you got the drying part, which takes forever at a laundromat. That's where I was, on a laundromat. I read that note, I brought my mail with me, and I was just like, it pierced my heart. Like, wow, God sees me? Even in all my sin and all my rebellion, and God could really see me and had a plan for me? It didn't change right away, but it planted a little seed, Rick, to help me understand that maybe there is some truth to that. I was sharing earlier that even in that, my brother had enlisted some other people in his church and prayer group to pray for this lost soul of his, me. Yeah, Dennis is in real trouble. He's so far away from God. We're a little worried about him. And so I think he probably had 4 or 5 people. And one of those people's name was Jean. And she was praying for me. She didn't know me, but she knew my brother Don. And when I ended up coming back to Maine, Don and Jan, his wife, they opened their house to me and let me stay there for a while till I got settled. And I remember going to one of the prayer meetings and, kind of going around and telling people and shaking their hand, hey, thanks for praying for me. I'm Don's brother. And I went up to Jeannie and I said, shook her hand and said, I'm Dennis. I'm the guy you've been praying for. She ended up becoming my wife.
Yes. That's such a great part of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. When her name is first introduced in the book, and you've had some other, relationships that have come along, and then her name came up, and I was like, oh, are they going to get together? So there's some good intrigue with that.
Yeah, and there's a chapter in there on how we're kind of like, dating a little bit and get to know each other.
Yeah. And you're what age at that time? You're how old?
Probably 29 at that point.
Yeah. Yep. Yes.
Yeah, there's a real sad part of the book earlier on in there where I was married before, married my high school sweetheart. And that was part of what shook me up is she betrayed me and went off with a really good friend of mine. And I was like, my heart was so heavy and pierced. And I felt, like, what did I do? And how'd that happen? And I mean, a lot of people feel that, right? With divorce and issues like that. It's just, But God used that. I think God used that to get my attention and, draw me close to Him. So even though it was a bad thing at the time and it hurt for a long time, ended up being a good thing.
Yeah. Well, the book opens with a story of you as a young boy in an adventure. On a canoeing adventure.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of adventure in the book. It's amazing how you're able to remember and write these stories in such detail. So that is one question that I had was, you did mention that you journal. So is that where you pulled some of the notes from and
that
details?
First chapter, interesting. That wasn't the first chapter when I first laid out the book. It's called The Allagash Wilderness. And the first chapter invites the reader in on my journey in the Allagash Wilderness, which was an 8-day journey. We packed everything you could possibly pack in a canoe. 2 people to a canoe. There were 4 canoes, so 8 of us on this journey with Uncle George, who had done this thing, I don't know, countless times. So I felt honored to be invited.
You were?
I was I was married to Jeannie at the time.
Oh, you were?
Matter of fact. Yeah, it was kind of just after we got married.
Oh, okay.
And so I had to be about 30, I think, at that point. And my friend Tom came with me, and we kind of ventured together. And there's a part in there you might remember about my partridge experience, meeting the bird on the
Yes.
trail. And
Yes.
I won't give it away, but
Yeah.
I like to think that that chapter represents our walk in the wilderness. If we're walking aimlessly and we don't know where we're going, that in some way you stumble, you get lost, and you really don't know your way out. And when I was lost in the wilderness, I was walking where no man had ever walked before. Really, there were down trees and bushes and briars, and you're clawing your way through. I was walking on trees, and then I would, oh, there's another balance beam, and walk over to that one. And before you knew it, I couldn't find the river anymore. I'm thinking the bears are coming. It's getting dark. It was frightening.
Yeah.
It really was. And this partridge pops up and kind of represents God.
Yeah.
Like, hey, Dennis, follow me.
Yeah.
So I follow the partridge. And all of a sudden there's a trail. Where'd that trail come from? That wasn't there earlier. I can't believe this. So I'm on the trail. The partridge apparently runs down the trail, I don't know, 10, 15 feet, stops. I walk toward it. Apparently does the same thing. This went on for a while. And people are telling me, partridges don't do that.
Yeah.
They are very frightful. So they're out of there. And the river, I could hear the river off to my right, and then came into view and got back to the falls. So kind of got saved, you know?
Yeah.
I was lost, then
Yes.
found.
Yes. Yeah. Another intrigue in the book is probably the most suspenseful part of the book for me was this whole thing of working in the mountains with the marijuana growth. Gee whiz. I must admit, Dennis, I was, I only because I knew the outcome was I not, really concerned, but that must have been pretty intense.
If you don't know me and you read that chapter,
Yeah.
you'll wonder, what are these guys doing?
Yeah.
What's going to become of them?
Yeah.
You know? And I call it the green unknown. And
this is what time frame?
This is prior to marrying Jeannie.
So this is 19.
Just after my first wife had left.
Okay.
And so this would have been 82 maybe.
Okay.
Somewhere in there. And I was really involved in smoking marijuana. I had a lot of people, that I was surrounded with that were doing that. And this couple, interestingly, had a sister and brother that were involved, and the mother. They were all involved in this business of growing marijuana.
Not legally.
And back then, it was very illegal.
Yeah.
And Reagan had just come out with the war on drugs. So there was big federal dollars and pushes toward, eliminating all kinds of drugs. And marijuana was certainly kind of classified, I think, with other harder drugs, like maybe meth and cocaine and things of that sort. So, we venture up there. And I think what you're sharing with me, I tried to make the experience a showing and not telling, meaning, let me just describe what's happening. And the fear, again, it was almost like this partridge thing in the wilderness, very similar, because there was a plane circling the day before over this area. In fact, there's a TV show on now. I forget what it's called. Murder Mountain, I think it is.
I'm not sure.
And there are episodes where people are growing marijuana up in the same region I was in.
Really?
And it's like Old West cowboys,
Yeah.
It's not very safe, and people aren't very nice to one another all the time. But the people we were with were kind and nice, but the plane was a little concerning for a lot of people. So the next day, there was a lot of chatter on these CB radios, and this is all new to me. I just went up there to kind of trim some marijuana and have fun, And so we decide they are bugging out, meaning like a MASH unit would. They would, okay, the enemy's coming. We're going to collapse everything. We're putting it all away, and then we're going to bolt out of here and go somewhere safer. And the 3 cars that we had, everybody, they mapped out all right, Dennis, you're going north to this point. Okay, Doug, you're going to go east. And so that was the plan. We all scattered, and that was nerve-wracking. That first night, we didn't know whether they had set up roadblocks or whether we were going to get away. It was federal, local, and National Guards that were running these raids. And
makes me sweat just
you got to
thinking
get the
about
book, though. There's a little bit more detail
Yes.
in that you'll find.
Yeah. Well, it made me sweat. There's no doubt about it. What kind of obstacles came in your way while you were writing the book? along the journey?
Obstacles. Time is certainly an obstacle. Trying to balance, life's responsibilities, relationships, and then writing is kind of an odd thing. You think, okay, I'm just going to schedule from 9 to 11. We're going to write. Then I'm going to go to lunch. And then I'm going to go cut the lawn. And well, you might sit down from 9 to 11 and You're right. They tell you just write, and it may not end up in the book or whatever you're doing, but you're at least doing something. And that would happen. And then you'd feel, oh, that didn't turn out so well. That was a waste of time. And there were other times where I went away on a retreat and it was just pouring out. And I was like, wow, I want to just take notes, from what I'm kind of sensing and hearing. And so that was one obstacle. I think another one that I came across was this betrayal that I mentioned, which occurred out in California, involved Wayne and Bonnie. Those are their names. And so I had written this betrayal, which was heartbreaking and wrenching. And I felt, well, I need to get their permission because it's their story too. And I didn't want to do that. I was like, One of the Wayne guy I had already dealt with. I had forgiven him years and years ago. We became really good friends, did stuff together, and that was all forgiven, just washed under, gone, wiped away. But the woman, Bonnie, I hadn't talked to in 40 years. So it was, well, first of all, how do I get in touch with her? Secondly, what do I say? And so I'd gotten in touch with her, I think, through some Facebook thing. I had not been on Facebook for 30 years, maybe 35 years. I'd started an account, didn't do anything. Basically, looked at my wife's account and would, look at what's happening with people. I never commented. She wouldn't let me. She didn't want me to comment on her account. But somehow we connected, and I sent her the first 3 chapters of the book. So in a literary perspective, the first 3 chapters or the first little bit of a book is supposed to be the hook, which means you are drawing the reader in so that they become interested and don't want to put the book down and want to find out what's going to happen. And I've heard this countless times. People say, I couldn't put it down. I started reading this. One woman sends me a review and she says, Dennis, you hook me as soon as we get into the Maine Allagash wilderness. I said, yeah. So the second chapter is a little bit about my radiation therapy, my start, and how I got kind of involved in that. And unbeknownst to me, I didn't know what it was going to end up being. But at that point, I was just interested. I was curious. And that's probably one of my either gifts or curses. I'm really curious. So I like to look around, find things out, investigate, research. And the third chapter is the Bonnie Wayne betrayal. So that was in there, sent that to her. She was able to read that. And then we talked on the phone and it went so much better than I thought. I had forgiven her in my heart. I don't know if she knew that or appreciated that, but the conversation was really good. That was a hard thing to do.
I'm sure it's very hard.
But it was good that we got it done and all was well. And other people can learn from this that, there can be betrayal, there can be heartache, there can be divorce, but there's healing. And there's that light that comes in and the darkness, it can't overcome it. The light just destroys it.
Yeah. I think those are the hardest part. All the beginning of that is the easy part. And that's what everybody focuses on. But the potential for forgiveness and for reconciliation and common bond, even available beyond that.
Yeah, I talked to this one woman the other day. She had purchased the book, and I'll call her Ruth. And Ruth was saying, I'm starting to read the book. And my wife was with me. She says, there's a really good part in there about forgiveness. She says, I got something. And you could tell she'd been carrying that. She was an older woman. And she'd been carrying that around a while. And she says, oh, God, I don't know. So, read through this chapter. Maybe it'll help you, and to be able to seek forgiveness and wipe the slate clean, kind of like God does with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't earn it. It's His mercy. It's His love that He forgives us. If we desire to be forgiven, that slate gets wiped clean.
Right.
and everything's cast as far as the east is from the west.
Mm-hmm.
That's far apart.
White as snow.
Yes.
Yeah. While you were writing, did you ever come to a point where you thought, I'm not going to finish, or were you pretty committed throughout the process?
I think initially when I first started writing, I just wrote out a little outline, and then I would, try to stick to that outline when I got done with one. The journals were really helpful because I was able to go back and I got a lot of detail, even some conversation, so that was helpful. I did get to a point where the publisher accepted my manuscript, and I was tickled pink. And I was trying to shoot for this industry standard. So it's not pages. You go by words, how many words there are. And there's, a little program in Word, and there's one, on most computers. So 60,000 is the memoir type of standard, between 50 and 60,000. So I worked hard to get to 60, got there, submitted it to the publisher, and they had a little chart they sent me. Well, this will be the price of the book based on how many words you have.
Oh.
I said, I didn't know that. So what do you think the price of the book would be for a 60,000 word? It was going to be $29. And I thought, that's expensive. I don't want that. I want this book to be reasonable. So believe it or not, I sent a note to the publisher. I was really committed at this point, really felt this was important. I'm going to give up my royalties for a year. I'm going to pay this fee that you guys are covering if we can bring the book down to under $20.
Congratulations.
They said no.
They said no?
They said no. They said, no, we don't do that. But you can cut the book down to about 45,000 words, and that'll get it under $20. And I said, that means I got to cut stuff out, like cutting your arm off or your finger or something. So that's how those first 3 chapters became the hook, which was a good thing because those were not the first 3 chapters initially. And there was content in there that I really, really liked. Talking about my twin brother. Growing up with a twin was really, really special. And we're really good friends now, And there were times that you would, back in the old days when you had a rotary phone, you'd pick up the phone to go to call somebody, and he would be on the other line.
Really?
Nobody dialed.
Wow.
That happened several times, not all the time, or other times you go to pick it up and the phone's ringing and it would be the other person. That's probably happened to you guys. I mean, on occasion, I don't know. So cutting that out.
By the way, of those in the room right now, only one of us knows what a rotary phone is. Yes, it would happen.
It could be worth something today.
That's right.
That's true, yeah. So I had to cut that chapter out. That was called the Saltwater Playground. We grew up in Barrington, Rhode Island, which is right on the Narragansett Bay, and it was a saltwater estuary. It would be very tight, like McCoy Bay. Not get quite that muddy, but muddy enough that you would go clamming, and cohogging, and crabbing, and fishing. Life was all about tides.
Yeah.
When it was high tide, we went swimming. When it was low tide, we did those other things.
Played in the mud.
Yeah. And so to cut that out was, I don't know, kind of hurt a little bit, and I had to cut some other stuff out about my dad. He served in World War II, and there's a really cool story in there about that. But that was painful, I guess, and hard.
I would think that would be very painful because when we were chatting before we started, you mentioned cutting that chapter about your twin out. And I just assumed that was the editor's choice, or publisher's choice probably would be the one that would do that. I didn't realize that was I could have kept self-elimination.
Kept the price of the book.
Yeah.
And right now the price is $16,
right.
Not $19 like I thought it would be. So I don't know, they must have had mercy on me or something.
Yeah. So what's it like to have to pare down? I mean, is there a future home for those other chapters, do you think?
Interesting you mentioned that. I just got back from a Christian Writers Conference in Asheville, North Carolina 2 weeks ago. And my middle son lives in Charlotte, which is about 2 hours from Asheville. So it was perfect. I got to visit down there, visit my grandson, kind of hang out with them for a day, drive up to Asheville, which has just come across this horrendous flooding. And so they had just opened, the road from Tennessee to Asheville there was some detours, and those people coming from that direction had to go around, where we had a pretty smooth path up there. And at that conference, I was mentioning, they had these cool little 15-minute, like little chats with the speakers, editors, agents, all these publishing type people. They're offering their time to you as a new author to try to help you get started. One of the guys said, well, Dennis, you know what you can do? You can take those lost chapters, you just post them on your website as a little bit of
Bonus
extra stuff. Yeah. So I have dennislever.com, which I was really surprised. I didn't know how to build a website or how to get this address, and it happened to be available, dennislever.com. I thought, wow. So I haven't put that up yet, but that's in the process of taking those kind of lost chapters.
Great.
And if somebody's interested to learn a little bit more background, they can.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating. That's cool. Yeah. So what do you do with the book now? I mean, you and I are talking about it, but what else happens to the book now?
Wow. That's a great question. And if you're out there and you're a budding author, this is the hard part. The writing is about 2 years of writing.
2 years.
And I would say initially I wasn't all that, scheduled and about it, but later that last year was pretty structured and stuff. And now that you become the marketing coordinator or director, the publishing company that I have does have a marketing department, and they're limited in what they can do. I mean, they produce the book. There's a little brochure that they produce for you. These little bookmarks, which is nice. They set everything up for you on Amazon. My book's also on Barnes & Noble, on Whiff and Stock. That's the publisher's site there. And a couple of other sites too. It's actually even in Sherman's bookstore.
Is it?
Yeah, right here in Maine. And but you've got to, put on your hat, look at a lot of podcasts, talk to people. I was able to talk to some people at that Asheville Christian Writers Conference about, what do I do? How do I do this marketing stuff? And it was interesting. This one woman had about an hour presentation, and she had us take this little quiz at the beginning. And you fit into one of 4 categories as your gifts. And I realized quickly that I'm not a social media guy. I don't like to do blogs, but that would be one thing you could do as a marketing. You could post on Facebook and Instagram and so on, but I was never very good at that, and still not very good at it. I don't like it. But I do like doing this kind of thing. Face-to-face, talking, chatting. I think part of that's because, I was a teacher for 35 years, and I spoke about radiation therapy and breathed radiation therapy. I spoke nationally at different conferences, so I was pretty comfortable talking. And I realized, well, that's my gift. So I could probably use that to help market. And it's been busy, but it's been really rewarding. It's been, usually you think about marketing, well, you'll do a book signing, which is fun. You set up a table, maybe at a bookstore or at a library or something like that, and chat with people about your book and maybe sign a few copies and stuff like that. And I have a launch party scheduled coming up this weekend. So I established what's called a launch team. And this is sort of an industry thing you do. So before the book was published, you would send out advance copies in a PDF format to people who agreed that they were going to read this within a month. They had a month to read it, and then post an honest review on either Amazon, Goodreads, or Barnes & Noble. I'd say about 60% of those people did that.
Great.
Which is great.
That's a high rate.
Apparently people say that's really good.
Yeah.
So I run into some of the other, I'm still reading your book. Oh, haven't, this happened? I say, yeah, I get that. Life happens. Yeah. So I'm going to celebrate that this weekend. We're having a launch party.
Yeah.
About 60 people coming.
Great.
Jeannie and I are cooking up a whole bunch of chili and some cornbread, and we're going to just celebrate and have fun.
Nice.
So that's a little bit of a marketing thing too, because I think some people might come that haven't purchased the book and they may want to buy a copy. Speaking at conferences and things like that. I got asked to speak at the Catholic Men's Conference coming up in 2 weeks.
Nice.
I got a little 10-minute slot to kind of share my testimony and what God's done in my life. Things like that, there are other things you can do. I think I'm looking at trying to set up a little talk at the library here locally, maybe in Bath, Brunswick, and Topsom. And that seems to be going pretty well too. It's kind of fun meeting people, connecting, telling a story. Yeah.
It must be a whole. Do you think that's an unanticipated phase for a lot of writers?
Surprised me.
Yeah.
I thought, well, with my other books, we wrote, we submitted, edited, back and forth a little bit. They did all the marketing. As a matter of fact, in that type of book, it was much different because our first book, I'm going to show you a copy of this thing. This is the textbook I'm talking about. So this is used by all radiation therapy facilities in the United States. And it became the purple book. The kids liked the purple cover, the second edition. So the editor said, let's just keep making it purple. It's not the radiation therapy, it's the purple book, which I guess is a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there was no marketing for that. We had 60 people contribute to the book, and the directors of the educational program said, this is the book we're using, and the students were made to buy the book, or they couldn't be in the program. So it's cool. It's used in all English-speaking countries in the world right now, throughout the United States, and it's really one of those themes, Rick, that I was trying to build into the book is this ripple effect. That the little gifts that you and I have and that you have, God can use those to help encourage other people. Kind of like what you're doing with this podcast. You're the chief encouragement officer. So you look for people and stories that offer encouragement. And encouragement is sort of the opposite of being downcast, discouraged, beaten up. You know, if we have people in our lives that are encouraging, it helps. It moves us forward. Helps us do things that we didn't think we could do.
Yeah.
So this book became a ripple effect. Let me tell you a quick story.
Yes.
This guy's name is Tripp, and I think he got his name because he was one of 3 Josephs, and he was the last of them. And so everybody called him Tripp, and he was very instrumental in my spiritual growth when I first really wanted to understand and know God and start to read the Bible. He was helping me how to do that, how to have a prayer time, and encourage me. We'd meet together, and it came to a point where I had been working at Maine Medical Center as a radiation therapist for a number of years. And we had students that would come by. You know, we had first-year students on Tuesday and Thursday and senior students on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It was a 2-year associate degree program. And the director was leaving, and the person who was the clinical coordinator was going to move up to the director position. So it opened up this new spot. And everybody in the hospital, Dennis, you should apply for that. You'd be good at that. Because you talk a lot, you draw good diagrams. And I really like taking the student aside and explaining, well, you know, the reason these beams are coming in this direction is we need to miss the spinal cord. If we don't, then there's a chance that that could paralyze somebody. And, you know, that's a pretty awful side effect. And so I applied for the job only because Tripp had suggested to me, you know, Dennis, I really liked what I was doing in the hospital. I felt like God was using me. I was having a really nice effect talking about cancer and life and God. And he said, you know, Dennis, if you thought about this, you're treating what, 30, 40 patients a day. And if you could raise up 10 other students just in your lifetime doing this education thing, then you would have multiplied not 30 patients a day, but 300 patients a day if people felt like you did and had a sense of a spiritual journey and a listening ear for their cancer patients. And, well, we know Jesus kind of did that too, didn't he? He got his 12 together, and then he sent out the 72 and kept growing this ripple. And that's what happened that day or that week. I made an application to the community college and got the job. Taught there for a number of years, and then this book became available. And the book has just been a huge ripple effect. It's been unbelievable. And it wasn't me.
Yeah.
You know, I was there, I helped, I did what I needed to do, but it was beyond me.
Yeah.
So this
plan was laid out long before.
The encouragement is so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the process of where does you used the word to describe in the book itself being vulnerable. Where along the path of writing the book does the vulnerability become the greatest? And when I'm talking about vulnerability, let me help maybe describe that a little bit more. I mean, I'm writing a book, I'm putting it out, I'm exposing myself. And is that the right thing to do? So how does that play out? I mean, because this is a personal book. This is your personal story. How did that work?
I'm sure you read that and, you know, you didn't know about the old part of me.
No.
You know, and so for you, it was like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It was something like, I'm putting myself out there naked, sharing a lot of hurts, some joys, my shortcomings, becoming vulnerable.
Yeah.
I don't know where that, I just felt that would be powerful in opening the heart of the reader to become vulnerable themselves. I got some problems in here. I got stuff in here I haven't shared with anybody ever. Nobody knows that stuff in there.
Yeah.
So my hope was that I'd unlock that a little bit and they could have a conversation with themselves or with their wife or their husband or their pastor or even God in the quietness of their room. Brené Brown, I can't remember what book it was, but she talks about vulnerability. I think it was a podcast I listened to. And it just struck me like, wow, vulnerability in most people's mind is sort of a negative term. Like, oh, the guy was raw and vulnerable. What an idiot sharing all that stuff, private stuff, And she equates this vulnerability with courage. So you think about that in the workplace. If you're vulnerable and you're willing to try new things and fail, it really takes a lot of courage to do that. Versus, well, I'm not going to try this new thing, or I'm not going to deal with this issue I have. I'm just going to stay here where it's safe and I have control over my little environment. So I'm more comfortable doing that. But becoming vulnerable, it's risky and it can be painful and it can be very rewarding too. So I think along the book, I kept wondering, it's a good question, Rick, how much I didn't want to involve a lot of scripture and be preachy, I wanted to kind of show this is what God did with me. He may not do that with you, but it was something that happened to me and God pursues us. I testify to that. The light shone in the darkness and the darkness could not overcome it. God was the light and kind of came down there, So I don't know, just it helped to be vulnerable and just tell my story. I kept kind of hearing that in my heart, There's probably some stuff I didn't share. Maybe another book, huh?
Yeah, maybe another book. Exactly right. Yeah. I got a question for you.
Sure.
Is there a favorite part of the book for you?
Wow. That's a toughie. There's a couple of favorite parts. I think that one you mentioned about the marijuana growing fields, I felt that was a really descriptive part of what happened. And I actually had the friend of mine that was with me on that trip.
Yeah.
I ran that chapter by him. So he helped me, edit that. And, I forgot that happened. And so he added a lot of really cool detail.
Yeah.
And it was good for him because then he became part of this process too. The description of the partridge on the Allagash Wilderness, I really enjoyed that. That was in my journal. I described a lot of that detail. So I was able to, kind of create that part.
Yeah.
There's a chapter in the end, and I don't want to give away the end of the book, but there's a whole chapter in there I write about on a group called Partners of World Health. So if you haven't heard of them, they are a nonprofit that gathers medical supplies and equipment. So having had the radiation therapy and the medical background kind of lent me toward when I first stumbled upon this site. I went to go deliver some x-ray equipment that my wife, she works at a dental office, was going to donate. And I had some radiation therapy equipment from the college that I was going to donate. And apparently they look at it, clean it up, and then they do something with it. And it wasn't until I got over there and I just arrived unannounced on a Saturday, there was a mound of plastic bags full of medical supplies and equipment that people had brought in and gathered. And it was huge. It was probably 30 feet high.
Wow.
It looked like a pyramid, just spilling. There were boxes everywhere. And I thought, what a mess. That's all medical stuff that you can use. And she appears out of some aisle that's all organized with catheters and blood pressure cuffs and syringes. And so somebody goes through all this stuff and then pulls out the stuff that's good. And I became really intrigued with this organization because it's another example of this, domino effect or this multiplication of the loaves effect where all of that stuff we collect would end up in the landfill. Most of it, 90-something% of it, I bet. And some still ends up in the landfill that we can't really utilize. But we do try to recycle the metal and bring that to the recycling facility. So that chapter is really close to my heart because it's something that I'm really fiercely, I love it. Saving from the landfill. We take this medical equipment and people evaluate it, they clean it, and we repackage it, and then we put it on a container. So it's probably about $350,000 worth of hospital beds, IV poles, cardiac equipment, boxes of supplies and syringes and stuff. We just sent one out on Tuesday to Ukraine.
Wow.
I think it's like our 9th shipment to them. That one gets airlifted.
Yeah.
Some group has put up the money for that. So, yeah, just a great example of how we can kind of give back and get together as a community, save stuff from environmental issues, and then give back to people who can use this stuff and need it.
And the book is connected to that as well, right? Did I read that properly?
Yep. Yeah, I'm going to go speak over there in, I think, 2 weeks. They've got a little thing set up for me and chat about that.
Are you donating some proceeds?
Yes, that's a good question. I know, a good statement. Yeah, all the proceeds minus my little bit of, it doesn't cost much to write one of these things. It's going to go to Partners of World Health and then Mid-Coast Hunger Prevention Program right here. So those are 2 programs that I'm really involved in, and my wife and I are really excited about. So we want to get back.
Good work.
It's not about me. The book is not about making money. It's not about me. It's about getting the message out, hoping that people can travel their own ragged road and then get in touch with their heart about what's happening.
Well, we could talk much more, but I think that is a drop the mic kind of statement at the end there. Right. So that's really good. So Dennis, just as a reminder at the end, if people want to learn more about the book and you, they go to
DennisLever.com is my website, and there's some buttons on there you can connect to the bookstores.
Yes.
You can go to Sherman's, pick one up. Amazon. If you don't like Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Barnes & Noble will order the book for you, and you can pick it up locally. No shipping.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, folks, for listening. And Dennis, great conversation. Yeah. Great works.
Appreciate it.
Well done, my good and faithful servant.
Amen.
All right.